I was lulled by the meditative sounds of your tube.
This nostalgic story starts with astronaut and commander Jakub Procházka wandering through the forests of Earth, but we quickly realize it's just a dream, as he's woken up by the spaceship's voice. Fully alert now, Jakub gets into position and starts a call with Peter, his remote colleague and member of the Eurospace program. In a Zoom meeting that could have been an email, the team is gathered by Commissioner Tuma, who explains that it's been 189 days since Jakub left on his solo mission. After the formalities and all, Jakub explains that his mission is to reach the Chopra cloud of stardust, discovered 4 years ago. If everything goes well, he's just a week away from making contact to collect a sample and, hopefully, uncover some of the universe's secrets. Because obviously, the best way to solve cosmic mysteries is by sucking up a bit of space dust.
Okay.
That said, Jakub agrees to answer some questions from civilians, including a know-it-all little girl who mentions she read that Jakub is the loneliest man in the world. And clearly she hasn't met League of Legends players. Jakub, being the cool guy he is, tells her not to worry and that everything will be fine, while holding back tears because he's reminded again that he's alone. Tuma then steps in to say that Jakub also talks to his wife, Lenka, and although Jakub agrees, he explains that he talks to her through technology faster than the speed of light. But that's a lie he tells just to keep his sponsors happy, who are so powerful that during the broadcast break, we see the commercials Jakub recorded with them, like anti-nausea pills. Definitely needed for a trip like this. After this, things get more interesting as a program member is nosy and checks the latest message Lenka sent Jakub, where she tells him she's decided to separate from him just as he's traveling through space. It seems going to buy cigarettes has evolved into exploring the cosmos as an excuse to end a relationship. But poor Jakub doesn't know yet that he's being left. Returning to our protagonist, after relaxing his sphincter to let his intestines clear out his dinner and changing the organic matter tanks, he decides to call Peter to ask for permission to fix the toilet because the mess was huge. Peter does it, and Jakub's tired face, looking as worn out as Steve Buscemi, shows up on the screen. Jakub explains that his insomnia is caused by the annoying noise from the bathroom that's keeping him from sleeping. It turns out space isn't as quiet as we were led to believe. With the buzzing of the equipment and the constant whoosh of the toilet, it's like living above a karaoke bar. Jakub then asks about Lenka, but Peter tells him they don't know anything. Oh buddy, let me tell you about ghosting.
Oh my God!
Meanwhile on Earth, Lenka is seen watching the Chopra cloud on the horizon. Jakub's day continues with him working out on the treadmill to stay fit and remind Lenka of his strong legs. Just kidding.
My bad, I'm sorry.
Meanwhile, the gossip brings Tuma the latest message from Lenka to Jakub, and she decides not to make the lonely astronaut even more depressed. Soon after, Jakub tries to contact Lenka, who is also pregnant, but she doesn't answer. It's the most painful scene ever, made worse by millions of kilometers of empty space. At the end of the day, Jakub still can't sleep, so he takes a sleeping pill and hopes for some deep rest. But the noise from the bathroom wakes him up again. When he looks in the mirror, he sees that he's actually Freddy Krueger. No, it's something worse. He's got a spider crawling out of his mouth. That's a nightmare, and he wakes up for real. After exercising, Jakub starts working with the sample collection simulation, but finds that half of the ship's cameras aren't working. Peter promises to report it, and Jakub asks again about Lenka. When Jakub tries to reach her, the signal cuts off because AT&T has no coverage out there. Then, a male voice greets him, asking if he needs help. Jakub demands to know who it is, and the voice apologizes and stops talking. Finally, Peter tells Jakub that Lenka went to visit her mother and will be gone a few days. Suddenly, the toilet breaks down again, and when Jakub approaches to fix it, a giant spider appears in front of him. Obviously, Jakub does what any brave man would do. He runs out and locks it in the bathroom. Since he can't see anything on the cameras, Jakub goes back to the bathroom to convince himself he's not going crazy. The spider then explains that it was attracted by the sounds from his poop vacuum. It also promises that he has no reason to be afraid. Yeah, right, a giant talking spider. Nothing to fear at all. Now Jakub can't even go to the bathroom in peace. Things are getting worse for him. He decides to lock himself in the isolation capsule with his suit, and from there, he asks Peter to decontaminate the ship just to be safe. When the process is over, Jakub notices that the spider is gone, and Peter tells him he should call a psychologist, not an exterminator. Because obviously, seeing giant spiders in space is a sign of perfect mental health. But when he gets back to the center of the ship, the spider is there, saying that even though it can sense his fear, it doesn't want to hurt him. To stop him from feeling guilty, it explains that the Earth chemicals didn't hurt it, just made it sneeze. Great, a mutant Charlotte's Web.
Spider, get it away from me! Get it away! Get it away!
He tries to attack it, but the spider tells him not to, explaining that in its tribe, physical contact is a violation, and naturally, Jakub doesn't want to be called out by the Year Me Too movement. So, he asks what it's doing there, and the spider replies that, like him, it's an explorer traveling to the farthest reaches of the solar system, like a spacefaring Christopher Columbus. But one day, it saw an episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. It never understood why Kourtney hates Kim so much.
No, I will literally you up if you mention it again.
That's when it found Jakub's ship. Seeing how lonely he was, it decided to come aboard to help him. Jakub doesn't believe it's real, thinking it's just a hallucination from insomnia, so he goes back to bed to force himself to sleep. Hours later, Jakub wakes up from a dream where Lenka was watching his capsule, because even in dreams, he can't get any rest. When he wakes up, the spider talks to him again, showing him that it was the one causing the visions in his dream. Meanwhile, on Earth, Lenka is thinking about moving to a home for pregnant women because she wants to be part of a club or something. On his side, when Jakub decides to watch recordings of his wife because he is a masochist, he is interrupted by the spider, who wants to talk about Lenka. But he refuses to talk, so the spider mentions that the cause of his loneliness seems to be his self-imposed limits. Not subtle at all. After a conversation about larvae and chocolate, and then follows the spider to the window, where he sees that the spider is also drawn to the cloud of dust. Being so close to it, Jakub remembers the night when Lenka proposed they make a vow to share their path no matter where it took them. But the sentimentality is suddenly cut short when the spider demands to know what the point is of making a vow that's so easily broken in a life like his. That hurts. Still, Jakub ends up accepting the spider as his new companion and decides to name it Hannes. Then we realize it has the power to see and control what Jakub sees in his head, like your phone making an emotional video with all the memories of when you were happy. Hannes wants to know where all that love with Lenka went, but Jakub asks it to stop torturing him with the memories. Hannes then explains that at first, it entered his thoughts, but then felt uncomfortable because humanity always feels guilt. But wait, because Hannes grabs attention again when it sees Jakub running. The astronaut explains that he needs to exercise to prevent his bones from wasting away, and Hannes finds it incredible how self-destructive humans are. On the ship, Jakub finishes practicing with the sample collection simulation with just 45 hours left until they reach the cloud. Afterward, as he's working, Jakub suddenly hears Lenka's voice. At first, he thinks it's the spider playing tricks on him, but then he realizes it's a recording of a conversation they had months ago. Jakub watches as Lenka tried to talk to him on that day, but he was as open as a locked vault. Lenka expressed her desire to understand what her husband truly wanted, because he's always torn between wanting to get back together with her and wanting to explore the universe. It's just like my ex, who would say, "I love you, but I need to find myself at the end of the universe." While trying to turn off the player, Jakub notices a cloud particle has infiltrated the ship. He moves quickly to encapsulate it, but discovers the particle is intangible and passes through matter like a ghost. With no other options, Jakub decides to use the spaceship toilet like a high-tech Dyson vacuum. Surprisingly, it works. However, when he sifts through the waste, the particle has vanished. And as if things weren't weird enough, communication with Earth cuts out. "Houston, we definitely have a problem." Meanwhile, Jakub sees more particles entering the ship, moving toward the cloud. Realizing how close they are, he asks Hannes what will happen when they arrive. The spider assures him there's nothing to fear, as the cloud or the origin is just a repository that can't be described with human words. Of course, nothing to worry about with such a clear explanation. Back on Earth, Jakub's wife, Lenka, finds a spider on her curtain. Instead of freaking out like any normal person, she decides it's a sign to move to a home for expectant mothers. Because, what else do you do when you see a spider? Back in space, Jakub reminisces about his glory days when he was as attentive to his wife as a teenager with his first iPhone. It turns out Lenka had a miscarriage, and Jakub always prioritized his work, paying more attention to his breakfast than to his wife's depression after the loss. The space spider decides to play therapist and make Jakub relive his most awkward moments. It's like a Black Mirror episode for Jakub. He sees how, when he finally returned home, he promised to be by Lenka's side. But Hannes reveals that Lenka could sense the falseness of his words and eventually stopped believing him. After working tirelessly, Jakub finally manages to restore communication with Peter, hoping to silence the spider. But Hannes is faster and interrupts the call to continue delving into the past. Jakub goes back to the flower field, where he told Lenka about his year-long space journey, promising it would be the last time. Lenka is skeptical because he always says the same thing. Hannes criticizes Jakub for not trying to understand Lenka's feelings and realizes it's impossible to connect with someone who only looks at themselves and connects only when convenient. Initially, Hannes thought all of humanity was like Jakub, but now, thanks to Lenka, he understands Jakub's loneliness is self-inflicted. Finally, Hannes decides Jakub is as interesting as watching grass grow and leaves him. Jakub, feeling lonelier than Wilson in Castaway,
I'm sorry, Wilson!
floats in zero gravity, reminiscing about the good times. Jakub tells Peter to go home and see Lenka. With no other options, Peter complies and shows up at her place. The first thing he says to her is that Jakub is alive. Peter explains that he doesn't want to interfere in their relationship, but for the mission's sake, he needs to tell her that Jakub just wants her to listen, and hands her a satellite phone. Once alone, Jakub tells Lenka that he now understands everything and can't imagine anything worse than the day he told her he wanted to see beyond Jupiter. He just wants to come home and can't grasp why he always left her alone when she was the only thing that truly mattered. He realizes she made an effort to understand him and apologizes for not doing the same, as even though she was right in front of him, he never really saw her. He knows he never deserved her, and if he could go back, he'd just stay by her side and never break that promise. As he says this, Jakub feels a sense of relief, and we shed tears that could fill 10 buckets. The mission continues, with Jakub venturing deeper into the space cloud. He then discovers that Hannes is also infected with space parasites, because apparently there wasn't enough drama already.
Courtney, what the is up with your Wi-Fi? You have this big-ass house, and you can't afford a Wi-Fi.
Seeing that Jakub fears the truth like any human, Hannes understands why dreams and nightmares are essential. Jakub chides him for never mentioning his situation, but the spider points out that Jakub never asked. Jakub manages to convince Hannes to let him hug him, and folks, that's consent. Once inside the cloud, Jakub deploys the ship's hydraulic arms to collect samples. However, he notices parasites starting to sprout from Hannes's body, forcing him to pull away. Jakub then decides to abandon the mission to go after Hannes. When Jakub realizes the spider has left the ship, he grabs a canister of decontaminating gas and heads out on a rescue mission. Suit on and heart racing, he exits the ship to find his 8-legged friend. Of course, Jakub's calculations go awry, and he accidentally shoves Hannes, causing the spider to crash into the ship and break loose. As Jakub spins through space, he finally reaches Hannes, who commends his heroic efforts. Even though Hannes admits the parasites will eat him, he reassures Jakub that he has some time left. Jakub watches his ship drift away and tells Hannes it reminds him of when he almost drowned as a kid, but was saved by his dad. Ready to meet his fate, Jakub accepts death, but Hannes tells him this isn't the end yet. Hannes pulls Jakub into the cloud center, where all time vibrations exist simultaneously. Past, future, Lenka, his dad, his promises, and his mistakes. As Jakub dives deeper, he gets sucked in one end and spit out into a peaceful place. He shares with Hannes the memory of when he met Lenka, realizing he always wanted to experience life's best moments with her. Knowing it's time for goodbyes, Hannes admits he's afraid to die but finds peace, knowing his friend is no longer suffering. Jakub gives Hannes some chocolate and supplies as a parting gift. As Hannes enjoys his treats and the light draws near, he suggests this might not be Jakub's end, the cloud parts, revealing an escape path. With a final farewell, Hannes advises Jakub to learn to listen to the silence before the parasites consume him entirely. What a scene. Meanwhile, Lenka decides to hang out in a field of spring flowers until night falls. While she's there, she spots a cloud particle making its grand exit from Earth. Back in his lonely spaceship, Jakub falls asleep and dreams of reuniting with Lenka. It's like a cosmic rom-com, but with fewer happy endings. On Earth, Lenka can actually feel Jakub's presence, kind of like a phone vibration from beyond the stars. Just as Jakub's dream gets good, a Korean spaceship arrives on the scene. By morning, Lenka gets a call, and it's Jakub, saying if he could turn back time with what he knows now, he would have never left. Lenka seems ready to give him a second chance. And that's a wrap on this emotional roller coaster of love, humanity, or maybe just an essay on loneliness. If you enjoyed this recap, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any movie recap. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.